All right, looks like everybody's out of the waiting room. Morning, welcome to the April 12th, 2023 V3 implementation call. As a reminder, these are recorded and we post them on the YouTube page after they are produced. And this is a conversation. We certainly welcome participation, so please feel free to type things in the chat or come off mute as we move through the agenda. And if you are able to, if you could rename yourself in the participant list to include your organization or company name so that we make sure we get the attendance list correctly for your compliance attendance. All right, I think we got everybody out of the waiting room. All right, Lauri, I will turn things over to you.
Sounds good. And I'll share my screen if that's okay, Ben. Hello, everyone, and welcome again today. Thanks for joining us. Oh, I'm sharing my wrong screen. Let me try that again. Sometimes it takes a couple tries here. No, let me try again.
We can see it, Lauri. We're seeing stakeholder introduction as a presentation.
Right, you're seeing the presentation view though, not the.
Nope, we're seeing just the PowerPoint, not the.
Oh, you were, okay. It's showing up on my other screen. All right, let me try that again. Is that correct?
Looks good.
Okay, perfect. We have started this where we introduce at the beginning of each call, introduce someone on the call. And the purpose of this really is to just get to know others on the call and have a chance to kind of build connections that we hope will lead to increased collaboration together. And also just have a little fun together as an icebreaker at the beginning of the call. So our person we're introducing today, when asked what they like to do to relax or unwind, they said they enjoy cooking. Something interesting about them is they, as a teenager, were asked to help the first internet service provider in Nashville clean up their offices. And it was 90% throwing away their pizza boxes, is what they said. This will age them a little bit too, if you can figure out what year that would have been. What do you like best about your job? They said, I love being able to answer questions about EMS and hopefully improve clinical practice with data. Any guesses? Feel free to put it in the chat if you have an idea. All right, this is our very own Ben Fisher from the NEMSIS TAC today. And Ben shared some pictures here of his daughter Charlotte is in the stroller. And then they have recently welcomed Owen Fisher to their family. So Ben is a dad of two and has many years of EMS experience. And we're excited to have him on our team. So thank you, Ben. Cute baby pictures as well. Thanks for sharing that.
And if I trail off or lose my train of thought, that's why.
That's fine. Ben's not getting so much sleep these days, but he's hanging in there. And just an update, here is our state map as of this morning of states that have turned green. I believe we have 12 now that have turned green. And it's going to be a close race, I believe, between Minnesota and Florida are both very close to submitting 3.5 records probably within the next week. So we'll see who turns green next. And then also in just a moment, I'll put a link in chat. This is a reminder for state data managers. If you have not already, if you wouldn't mind taking a minute or two to fill out a brief survey that will just update us on your transition timeframe. We have committed to doing this quarterly, and so we're interviewing or surveying you for the second quarter, and then we will update your transition times on your state page, as well as on a sheet for software vendors posted on our website. So thank you for taking a few minutes to do that. I think I already have about 20 states that have submitted it, and I have a deadline of next Wednesday. So sometime in the next week, if you can spend a few minutes to do that, we would appreciate it. That is all I have. I'll pass back to you, Ben.
Great, thank you. And we will move over to Julianne for the sunsetting policy review.
Okay, I'm gonna get my screen up here. All right, hopefully you can see the main NEMSIS website screen. All right, I'm going to show you where the compliance policy is, and then we're just going to highlight the sunsetting policy. So on the main NEMSIS website, if you go to technical resources, that first topic is compliance. And under compliance, you've got some different documents. Here is the updated compliance policy. And actually, I'll throw this in chat. Let's see, everyone in meeting, chat, there we go. Okay, so that's in chat for your reference. I just want to highlight the sunsetting policy because we're getting to that time of the year. And that is down on page 4. So the NEMSIS TAC, we're no longer taking applications for new software products in version 3.4. So if you need to recertify your 3.4 before the end of 2023, you need to get in your application for recertifications, not for new products, but for recertifications. Your applications need to be in by June 1st. And if you've got any questions as we just kind of talk through this and I give you the resources, please feel free to reach out to anybody at the TAC or reach out to Jennifer Correa. So initial compliance applications, so we covered that. We're not taking any more initial applications for 3.4. If you need to recertify for your 3.4 product before the end of 2023, get that in by June 1st. We will not accept compliance applications for recertification of 3.4 for the last 6 months of 2023. Keep in mind that California has waived their yearly requirement on 3.4. So please confirm with Mark Roberts and with California if you operate there and your software usually tests annually. You can work with Mark on that, but just be aware of that reminder. And if your software version 3.4 compliance expires within the last 90 days of 2023, there's, follow the compliance policy, request an extension to your certification through 12/31. We're looking at trying to make this as clear as possible for all of the different variations of compliance that our vendors are going through. So please reach out with any questions. Sunsetting policy is in full effect because we're looking at this year of transitioning from 3.4 to 3.5. And you can always check the NEMSIS website if you're unsure of when your recertification dates are due. Let me show you where you can see that. And then, of course, all of our vendors and states have access to the compliance software testing page. And you can leave it on 3.4, you can leave it on 3.5, and then the dates are listed on the website publicly for recertification dates. So if you're not sure, check here or reach out with Jen, and then please be aware of the compliance policy and also the sunsetting policy. And I am filling in for Jennifer Correa. She is at a conference this week. Otherwise, it would be Jen, who is our fearless compliance guru for NEMSIS. I am going to stop sharing and then open it up if there are any questions. This is a review. We've gone over this before and the compliance policy isn't new, but we'll bring up different aspects of the compliance policy throughout the year, just so that everybody's on the same page and doesn't feel like there are surprises in that policy that's on the website. All right, Ben, back to you.
All right, thank you. We will go over to Monet real quick about annual meeting.
Hi, there's one quick question in the chat for Julianne, I believe.
Yes. So Nick, this is the last recertification for 3-4. We will not recertify 3-4 past this year. Everyone's expected to be transitioned to 3-5 by Jan 1. The TAC won't be accepting 3-4 records after that date. So that's the plan.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I currently have the save the date flyer up on the screen. It is on the NEMSIS website, but I want to tell you a quick story. So as a result of accepting the admin position with the NEMSIS TAC many years ago, I was able to meet the NEMSIS stakeholders during my very first week on the job. I remember sitting in the front row next to Dr. Greg Mears, one of the pioneers of NEMSIS. And I was sitting there feverishly taking notes, trying to spell the word wisdom. I got stuck during the presentation. I'm sitting there spelling W-I-S-D-O. Dr. Mears kindly wrote a little note to me on his notepad and wrote the acronym. And I thought, wow, that was really nice. He's going to help me understand the standard. The gesture put such a big smile on my face and in my heart. I knew that I was home. That same day, I met Juan Esparza from Florida, David Saylor, who happened to be my neighbor in the Bay Area. I was hooked on NEMSIS. So what I wanted to remind you is that understanding the NEMSIS standard is a continuous process. I continue to learn the intricacies of the NEMSIS standard by sitting next to the NEMSIS stakeholders. The purpose of the annual meeting is for the TAC to engage with all states, territories, and EMS software vendor companies to improve the NEMSIS standard. So who do you want to sit next to during the next NEMSIS meeting? Please plan to join us for the dates of August 22nd through the 24th of this year, 2023. We're going to be in Park City, Utah. I will open the registration portal at least 1 week by next week, and we will announce it on our social media platforms and on the NEMSIS Google group. I will provide an FAQ on the NEMSIS website to answer any questions. So if you have any questions at this time, please let us know. If you want to send in your questions, that would be great as well. But we look forward to seeing you. All right, thank you. That's enough out of me. Are there any questions? Okay, have a great day.
All right, thanks, Monet. Julianne, I think we go back to you to talk about MVC dashboards.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Let me pull up a flyer that I want to share. I'm going to take it from you, Ben, and I'm going to share. There we go. So at the request of a state data manager, the NEMSIS TAC worked on being able to develop a security permission level for the state level, for one of the state level dashboards. We were asked to be able to provide access to a state traffic safety data partner to just the state level MVC dashboard. They wanted to be able to share MVC related EMS data directly with that office that they were working with to collaborate and to help the traffic safety folks understand how to use and how to use EMS data, but also what a rich resource it is. So as we did that for a single state, we under the great direction of Eric Chaney and Jeremy with the Office of EMS, we decided to implement that ability for other states. So what this means is that states are able to grant permission to a single user that's a traffic safety data partner in their state. They can grant permission for that person to have access to the state level MVC dashboard, just that one. Granting permission for a traffic safety data person to see the state MVC dashboard only lets them into that dashboard. It does not allow access into any of the other state restricted data, such as the state data cube or other state reports, other state level Tableau dashboards. So it is very specific to just the MVC. I'm overemphasizing this point because it's really important. It's just specific to the MVC state dashboard. So we have developed a flyer. We will share this out with you. We've been sharing it with traffic safety data partners so that they're aware of the tremendous resource that EMS data can provide for traffic safety initiatives in the state. We are trying to identify ways that we can better support states as they seek and apply for traffic-related funding opportunities in their states. And we want to be able to help provide resources like this to ideally reduce the burden on the state data managers as they get requests for MVC-related data specific to their state. So this is just the flyer that we're sharing, the process that a traffic safety data partner would have to go through to request access to a state-restricted MVC dashboard. Permission for that access is solely on the state office of EMS. NEMSIS does not grant access to state-specific data to another state partner without specific and express and written approval from that state office of EMS. So the process that we will require traffic safety data partners to go through is submit a request, submit a request to NEMSIS. They need to give their person, last name, organization, title, the state which they're requesting access for, the purpose of their interest in the MVC data, and then their contact information. From there, the TAC will reach out to the state data manager or the state office of EMS, provide that information, and ask that state whether or not they want to give permission, grant access to that state data traffic safety person. If they say yes, the TAC will follow up and create a specific user account for access to that dashboard only. And we'll communicate with that partner, keeping in loop the data manager all the way through the process. So ultimately, we want to be able to support traffic safety data initiatives in a state, and we want to be able to reduce that burden on the data managers by helping them to be able to share that EMS MVC data directly with their traffic partners without them being the ones to have to pull up that data all the time. We're just looking for ways to better support the data managers, especially in light of funding opportunities and promoted partnerships in that traffic safety data world. All right, I just threw a whole bunch of information at you. We'll make this flyer available. Are there any questions? Okay, I see we've got some in chat too.
Hey, Julianne, just a quick key point, and this is redundant because you hit it, but I want to hit it again. There will be no one granted access to a state's traffic crash dashboard, motor vehicle crash dashboard, unless that state director gives approval for that access, period. I want to reassure everybody of that. We take that very seriously, given our data use agreements. There's no end around here. It was something we were asked to develop. It is a great tool. It's no extra work on the data managers, the data manager side of the house. We try to take that off of you. The bottom line here is If you have a good working relationship with your traffic safety folks and you want to provide them with access to it, we will make that happen. If you say no, we will not allow that to happen. So if there's questions about that, please address those to me. I'll be happy to take it on. I do want to go back and catch one thing in the chat. Monet covered it, but I want to make sure it's clear. We'll have a virtual option for the annual meeting this year. We'd love to see everyone in person. I think you get so much more out of it in person. However, I realize there are time constraints and financial constraints for people to attend some of these things. But we're also looking at trying to do some of the stipends like we did last year. That depends on the amount of money I have access to and can get. And that varies from year to year. So I don't have a final dollar amount. I know that they have, Julianne and Monet and others have asked, for people to submit. If you're interested in getting a stipend, they'll go through that process just like we did last year to make it fair to everyone. And, if there's questions, again, please let me know. But on those two topics, yes, virtual and on the motor vehicle crash thing, we are very cautiously moving into this world of who gets access and who doesn't. And all of that will go through the state director. Over.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate you emphasizing that point. That's been an incredibly important aspect of this whole process and through these discussions. Ridgely did have a question about if it's only available to one person. And yes, at this time, we're only offering one account that has this specific security scheme applied to it. And it does, our security measures for user accounts do require that the user account is attached to a person and not to an office. So if there's a group of people who all want access, somebody in that group would have to be the point person that received authorization as that individual, and the account would be an individual account, and not, we don't do group accounts for secure data. I'm going to see, I might be able to throw this PDF in the chat. I'm going to see if I can. Otherwise, it'll go out to the Google group, and it'll also eventually be on the NEMSIS website so that everyone has access to it. And you are welcome to share it with your state highway safety organizations, your traffic records committee, those traffic safety partners that you have in your state. So you're welcome to share it with those. All right, I'll turn it back over to you, Ben.
Great, thank you. All right, I think now we are going to go over to an update on the migration to the AWS cloud, and I believe, Diane, that's you.
That is me, yes. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, I can't
Diane
share.
Oh, you can't. Yep, sorry, there you go.
All right, it's always a little nerve-wracking to share. Can you see my screen?
Yep, sure can.
Okay, all right. And then that's the wrong screen, so I'm going to switch.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Diane Hartford. I am an IT project manager at the Utah Data Coordinating Center. I work very closely with NEMSIS, and Monet's lovely story about her beginnings of NEMSIS had me reflecting on my own. I first became introduced to NEMSIS in 2007 when I worked at the Utah Department of Health Bureau of EMS with Josh Legler. We had cubicles right across the hall from each other. And I remember when Utah hit 10,000 NEMSIS submissions, like we had banners and posters. So you guys have come a long way, and it's been my pleasure, my honor to be a part of it in different facts facets along the way. So also on the call with me today is Drew DeMarco, my colleague. He is the Enterprise Infrastructure Architect at the DCC. And as you probably know, NEMSIS IT has been working for the last 2 years to build out the infrastructure to replicate the NEMSIS systems from on-premises at the Utah DCC into the AWS cloud. And I'm thrilled to let you know that we are just about ready to start receiving submissions into the cloud environment. There will be a period of about 5-ish weeks where we will be receiving submissions in both places, on-prem and in the cloud. During that period, we'll be testing and validating the data to ensure that both environments are in sync before we stop receiving submissions on-prem and fully cut over to the cloud. So I wanted to share with you a few changes. We've tried to be thoughtful about the process and minimize the impact of the migration on the NEMSIS TAC and you, our external stakeholders. But there will be some changes to the way that we've operated in the past. I will send out all the information that I'm going to share with you today after the meeting, and I'll work closely with Julianne and Ben to see if it's the Google group or where the best channel is to share that information. But for an overview, authentication process will change. We're going to freeze changes, password changes. There will be NEMSIS web submission ciphers that we'll talk about, and then the testing period. So I'll go over each one of these individually. Authentication. The way users authenticate into NEMSIS will change. On premises, we've been using Active Directory or AD accounts. In AWS, that authentication will change to Okta. And we will be migrating all existing service accounts into the cloud. The next thing you should know is that we're going to start blocking password changes on service accounts starting on Monday. That's April 17th, this coming Monday. This will be the first step in our migration and cutover process, and that they will stay blocked until the migration is complete. Another change is to the NEMSIS AWS is the web submission TLS ciphers. There is some overlap with the web submissions, but they are not identical. This is unlikely to cause any issues with most applications, but we wanted you to be aware of the change and provide you a list of the ciphers that will be used in the future. If you are like me and until recently had no idea what a cipher is, I will just tell you, it's the encryption protocols that clients and servers use for secure communications. And here on this slide, you'll see a link to Amazon where it talks about the TLS 1 and 2 edge optimized API endpoints in the API gateway. So when you click on this link, there'll be a web page, and this is the part that you want to pay attention to. This is just a screenshot that talks about the ciphers that are utilized. There's also a table there. I know you won't be able to read this, but it'll be in the follow-up communication. So you can see what ciphers will be supported. And then finally, if you want to test the ciphers, if you want to test your system against the new web submission ciphers, you can accomplish this by using the current NEMSIS onboarding site. If you can submit to the NEMSIS onboarding site, then you should not have any problems submitting to the NEMSIS web submissions when we cut over to AWS. That was a mouthful. We're almost done, and then we'll take some questions if you have any. From the week May 12th through the 19th, we'll be working with the NEMSIS TAC to test out the system. They will be critical in helping us with that validation that making sure that everything they do now on-prem, they're also able to do in the AWS cloud. I know many of you work with Jen Korea, and she may be reaching out to you during this period as part of her testing. So just wanted to give you a heads up about that. Finally, do you have questions for either me or Drew?
Hey, Diane, this is Josh.
Hi, Josh.
I just wanted to point out for people, you were talking about user accounts and things called service accounts. So service accounts are the accounts that are used by software to submit data to the national database. So state systems sending data to national. So service accounts will continue to be managed in a way kind of similar to what you're used to now. It's the people accounts, to access dashboards on the NEMSIS website and stuff like that, that will be migrating over to the service called Okta. So people will be creating new accounts in that new service for the kind of that web-based access to things.
Yeah, we'll be creating the accounts that users currently use in Okta, and they'll receive an email to register that account in the migration. But what Josh is saying is correct. Yeah, it's the user, the things you use to access reports and cubes and stuff like that will have a different login mechanism.
Anne asked about the timeline again.
We're going to be starting the cutover process on Monday, and we anticipate it'll last probably 5 to 6 weeks before we fully cut over from on-prem to the cloud.
Diane, this is Clay. Can you hear me okay? I apologize. I'm in a noisy room. When you were mentioning the fact that there'll be a freeze on passwords, it sounds like it might be valuable for those who have been inactive with the account for a little bit of time, perhaps to renew now, just to ensure that they can get through that 5-week period before the entire process is complete. Does that make some sense for folks to do that?
Just to clarify, the password freeze is for the service accounts. It is not for the user accounts.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
So they wouldn't typically be affected by that, by the expiring of passwords that you're referring to. It's the password freeze is for the service accounts that people are using their applications to submit their submissions for.
Hey, Diane, could we make that distinction in the PowerPoint presentation before we share it? Distinguishing the difference between a service account and a user account or AD account.
Yes, will do.
All right, thanks.
And then Anne was also asking about downtime, if any of the dashboards won't be available during the cutover period.
Drew, I think there's going to be a couple of dashboards that may not refresh for a week or two because there's going to be duplicate data, right? We'll have it on-prem and in the cloud.
Yeah, we're right now we're not planning on it, on there being a downtime on the reports, but we're doing tests and double doing tests to make sure that if there are any issues we need to account for. So there is a possibility, and we would communicate that if we find out that needs to occur. But at this point in time, as far as the reporting goes, we don't have a plan to do that. There is talk about what Diane said. We think we have that resolved right now. But if in our further testing we run into something where there might be a delay on updating reports.
It looks like Anne has a question. Anne?
Sorry. I probably either didn't understand the beginning of the presentation or figured that it applied to the vendors, and then I would try to figure out later how much it applied to me. But now I'm thinking I may not completely understand. I agree with Julianne. If we could have some kind of thing, even if you said, example, state data manager will not be able to access, this during this time or whatever. And if you do have a dashboards that are show duplicates, of course, I can see why you take those down. But if there's a chance they might be wrong during the time they're displayed, it'd be nice to have a note. I access them occasionally, but I also think they're used by our director or rather our bureau chief. If that's the case, it might be good to have something so that if you foresee that as being a problem.
Yeah, what we're talking about is not updating the dashboards. So they would have past data versus them having incorrect data. We wouldn't want to put them up with incorrect data.
Okay, so if they're not being updated, would they still be available? And would it say there's not a problem with the dashboard? Like, it's not something where someone's going to be worried that we've stopped submitting data or something like that, but it's just it's like under construction.
If there is going to be a change to the dashboards, whether their data is delayed or not displayed, then we would send out a communication about that when we know the details of what that may be.
Okay, thanks.
And this is Josh again. One more thing I wanted to mention. There will be some URL changes. The really important one will be the URL for the Git repositories. Currently, it's stash.utah.dcc.org, and that's going to become get.nemsis.org. I think there will be a couple other systems that will have URL changes as well. And Diane, I was wondering if you could compile kind of an inventory of those URL changes so vendors or others who are linking to or accessing those URLs can prepare for them to change.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Any other questions for Diane or Drew? All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. All right. I think we're going to head over to Clay and Josh about the V35 critical patch number 4.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, folks. Hey, it's great to be with you, and it's great to be able to announce that we've been able to release the critical patch number 4 for version 3.5 earlier than anticipated. So we wanted to go over some of that material today, and Josh is going to go over the technical pieces of that. Before we kind of go into describing the critical patch and the national custom elements that are in place, I just want to point out that Lauri added a link in the chat. You'll have to go up a couple of entries, but she has added a link where a state data manager can apply for assistance to the annual meeting. So this is a system similar to what we used last year. Eric mentioned that there's the possibility that there will be some funding available to help data managers to attend. So if you think you're facing any kind of financial limitation to be able to attend, even if it's a small one, or if you're looking for full funding, we'd love it if you'd go ahead and apply. And so that as we find out that money's available graciously based on the great work that Eric does with the Office of EMS, if we do have opportunities to offer a stipend, some stipends, we'd love to have your entry in that in that database. So feel free to fill that out. All right, let's get back to the national custom elements and the critical patch. Julianne, if you'd be so kind to share your screen, I apologize. I'm offsite at a meeting, and it's hard for me to share. If you go to the NEMSIS website, I want to just remind you where the national custom elements for e-injury 03 and e-injury 04 are currently found. So if you go to the beginning, we go to the National Custom Element Library. And on this page, we have added in our kind of descriptions of the national custom elements that have been developed. We've added an item 4 here that provides you with a user-friendly version talking about how the ACS trauma triage criteria are have switched from their 2011 criteria to their 2021 criteria. And this two-page visualization goes over ENG03 and ENG04, describing how the values that are present in those two elements that capture the trauma triage criteria, how they've changed, how they've been updated, what they map to, or whether there's no change at all, right? Whether the same value is present in both of those guidelines. And so feel free to look this over and to distribute this to clinical users and to other educators that will be helping our providers be able to switch over to the new critical patch and utilize the 2021 guidelines. Any questions about that? The infographic you see here before we actually go to the library?
Have we heard anything from the states about who desperately wants this or who is not ready for this as far as protocols and as far as receiving data also? I haven't seen any, we haven't gotten any transition plans from any states that we're working with.
Yeah, David, thank you. It's a great question. Any of the states want to speak up about their movement to the 2021 guidelines?
This is Anne. So I know that our state will be asking all the agencies to start reporting using this. I don't know the date. I think a lot of it depends on when all the vendors have to have it or the ability to apply it to those agencies in our state that we work with. So, but certainly it would coincide with our deadline to go to 3.5.
This is Sherry in Montana. We have implemented the new trauma triage guidelines and are anxiously awaiting the ability to document that.
Okay. Would you be able to collect these at the NEMSIS TAC to let us know, Clay or Julianne? Same if we have 3.5. So do we have anything for a 3.4 version that could be published, collected?
Yeah, David, it's a great thought, right? And it really coincides with the critical patch. So yeah, let's talk about that in a few minutes. The timeline for migrating to critical patch 4. It's a great question, and us kind of collecting some information regarding state's interest in making sure that that's in place, that will be important. So yeah, we'd be happy to do that. We could potentially do a survey or something like that that would get a beginning feel among states. And so I'll make a note of that. Yeah, thank you.
Because they're not going to be compatible even. It's almost like a 3.4.1.
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, so we'll talk about in just a minute. Yeah, so thank you for that question. Julianne, could we go back to the National Library? Just want to show where you can download the national elements that represent these changes to ENG03 and ENG04. Yeah, so access the custom element library there. And then there's that small button on the left there at the bottom for the national custom elements. We're looking to provide some organization to this section so that, for example, you could look which of these national elements were associated with an epidemic response, right? Many of these were associated with COVID early on, and others are added here to support critical patch 4. For example, here's ENG03 and ENG04. So here are the two new national custom elements that are available. We'll add some structure to this area here in the near future so that you'll be able to move through these national custom elements a little bit easier. But here's where you'd find the custom element code and its association with the NEMSIS code moving forward for ENG03 and ENG04 for those who wish to use this in the interim until critical patch 4 is in place. Any questions about the national custom elements?
Hey Clay, this is Eric. Just to say that in terms of the trauma triage guidelines, Peter put it in the chat that they met some resistance. There are states that have adopted their own in the past and have never adopted these guidelines. There are states that allow this up to municipalities or counties or subsections of their state to make those decisions. So, David, the answer to your question is we can ask and try to keep track of who's moving at a state level, but there may be states that just say we pass that option on to the agencies or the counties within the state. We'll try to keep track of it for you, but it's something that I've been talking a lot about. In it's good and bad. It's good in that we recognize that some people don't adopt these, right? And in other cases, we're in the process of trying to get grant funding for through the infrastructure money for people to move to them. So that may help. I'm not sure. But the timeline is the other option here, the other problem. Some will move very quickly. Montana is obviously out ahead of the curve, doing an outstanding job. But then there are other places that may have other challenges just because of size, like Texas, California, and Florida, or because of the rural nature, Wyoming. I'm just making excuses at this point. But all of those could be valid reasons why it doesn't happen as quickly as other places. And it's probably things that everybody's thought of. I just felt like we need to hear them again because there isn't a wholesale expectation that this is going to happen on a particular date and time, I think, by anybody. So we'll keep track of it and see how things go.
Okay. And so along those lines, so version 3.60 of NEMSIS or whatever the next one is not going to include the previous trauma criteria. So if a particular municipality has old trauma criteria, they're just going to be, we're just going to have to, shrug and say we can't do that for you, except for some kind of custom project.
I think we'd have to revisit that at that point. I don't know that we can just wholesale walk away from one particular criteria over another.
Okay. Gotcha.
That would be ideal, but I think there's a reality in here that we just have to accept that there are places that it's just like the triage tags. Go to a conference, you want to see who has the best triage tag, look at the vendor with the jazziest booth. That's been a big thing since 9/11. Like, do we barcode them? What, I go back to where we had the rabbit, the turtle, the skull and crossbones. What was the other one? Oh, the yellow yield symbol, right? That's how old I am. Now we have barcodes and peel off stickers and all kinds of cool jazzy stuff on them. I don't know that they get used all the time, but they're out there and they exist. So who adopted what out of those categories? I really don't know, but we'll keep track of it. And but I think there is a reality that not everybody in the nation is going to move to those guidelines, and they're certainly not going to do it on a timeline.
Okay.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, David. Great comments. Other comments related to the national custom elements before we actually go to the critical patch tools and artifacts. All right, then we'll have a discussion about timing as well after that. Josh, do you want to go ahead and take over?
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Clay. I'll go ahead and get screen sharing switched over here. Okay. So I want to make clear that, the distinction between custom elements and the critical patch, which brings the triage criteria updates into the core NEMSIS standard. The custom elements for the 2021 triage criteria were published before the critical patch was published. for the purpose of providing a way, if people needed to immediately start collecting the 2021 triage criteria, they could use custom elements to do it, and they could do it in a consistent way across the country by implementing custom elements that had been vetted by the NEMSIS TAC. And so it was to fill the gap until the critical patch was released and implemented. So after the critical patch has been implemented by a majority of products, we can actually remove the custom element configurations from the national custom element list because they'll be redundant with what's just in the standard with the critical patch. The custom elements were also published in NEMSIS 3.4 format, so you can get those in the 3.4 branch of the National Custom Elements Git repository. So if someone needs to continue using 3.4 and collect the 2021 triage criteria, they can use custom elements to do that. In 3.5, the trauma triage guideline changes have been incorporated into the 3.5.0 standard with this latest critical patch number 4. So I'm going to go over what's in the critical patch number 4, the precise changes to the XSDs. And then I'm also going to talk about 2 precise changes to the national schematron rules that are to fix a couple bugs that are unrelated to the triage criteria. The idea of a critical patch is that it be very tightly scoped to fix a specific thing or set of bugs and not to throw other things in, even though it might be convenient to do so. So this is very tightly scoped. The reason for that is so that vendors can just go implement the thing that changed and do so quickly and get up to the latest patch version of 3.5. So the expectation is that that vendors will prioritize getting switched over to this latest critical patch. The way it's been designed, it adds the new triage criteria. It updates some labels on some existing criteria. It deprecates, but does not remove some 2011 criteria points that are no longer being used. Because it does not remove them, it only deprecates them. It means that this critical patch is backwards compatible. So a system that is on the latest critical patch will still be able to receive data from a system that has not moved to the latest critical patch. However, it's not forwards compatible. So in other words, the state systems need to get up to the critical patch first before the local systems start trying to send these new triage criteria values to the state systems. So that order will be important. And really, I would recommend just doing this as soon as possible because you can implement support for this critical patch and still just not turn on the new values and still keep the old values turned on, even though they were marked deprecated, right? So even if you move to the new critical patch, you can still configure a particular installation of your system to just do the 2011 triage criteria like it does today. So there's no downside to moving to this patch early. And then you're prepared, and when your customers are ready and when the state is ready, then they can activate the new values that your software will support. Okay, so where to get the precise changes? Technical resources menu, data dictionaries, and XSD. That's the page I'm on here. There's a change log that we're going to look at first, right at the bottom of the first set of links. In the 3.5.0 change log, I have scrolled down to the e-injury section to look at e-injury 03 critical patch 4. So if you are searching the change log, you can search for critical patch 4 to hone in on just the changes related to this critical patch. It'll indicate here that the name of the element has changed, the definition, the comment, and the V3 changes. Those have all changed. It gives you the old values and the new values, and the pertinent negatives have changed. There's now a pertinent negative allowed of none reported. If I scroll down a bit, actually I'll scroll a little further, we'll see the same things for e-injury.04, that all those same things changed. And then we'll see a link here to the enumeration list, and I want to go to that. So this will outline in detail. In black are the codes and descriptions that had no changes at all. In blue are the codes that had their description changed, but the code stays the same. So it was just a minor wording change. The intent was the same. And then in green are the new values added to that enumerated list. So in software systems, these would be the ones that you would be adding to your database so that you're able to collect them. The ones in blue would be the ones that you're going to update labels on. The ones in black you'll leave alone. You'll see that some of them have been marked deprecated. So those are ones that they can still be collected, they'll still be valid, but it's signaling to the community that in the future, the intent is to remove those values from the standard, like in a 3.6.0 release is the soonest that would come. Now, sometimes deprecated stuff stays around for a long time in systems. I know I've seen certain things that are marked deprecated in tools that I use that hang around for 5 or 10 years, but it does signal an intent to remove those in the future. Okay, I'll show you the data dictionary now. Here's the page for ENDRIO 3. And you'll see, well, first of all, that the title, the description, those have been updated. It now allows that pertinent negative of none reported. It's got certain ones here listed as deprecated. All of the labels have been updated, and the new values for this enumeration set have been added. And then, of course, the comment and V3 changes implemented, those have changed as well. Okay, so that's what changed in the XSD. I showed you those two ways to get to it. Another way you could go is if you've cloned the NEMSIS public repository, you could do a diff between the CP3 tagged commit and the CP4 tagged commit and see what all the files that changed and all the lines in files. If you whittled that down to just XSD changes, you would see just, I think, like 1 or 2 files that changed in the XSDs. Before I move to the schematron changes, are there any further questions on the implementation of these triage criteria in the critical patch? Okay, great. Okay, schematron changes. These are mostly unrelated to the triage criteria. On the schematron page of the technical resources menu, you can get to, among other things, the schematron change log, and that will detail all changes to schematron. I've gone ahead and summarized the 2 important changes. I'll just mention one change is just to update the national schematron schemas to recognize the new names of ENDRIO 3 and ENDRIO 4. So no changes to the rules there per se, but just the names of those elements changed. And so we want to make sure the validation rules reflect that in their messages. There are 2 other changes in the schematron rules to fix bugs that were found in the national schematron rules. The first bug was in rule number 182, which is a warning. And the rule reads, unit disposition should be patient contact made when transport disposition is a value other than non-patient transport not otherwise listed or no transport. So essentially, if you transported a patient, you must have made patient contact. The assertion incorrectly failed, so it would throw a warning when it should not have thrown a warning, when the unit disposition was not patient contact made, and transport disposition was recorded with any value, not just the 2 values that are listed here. So that was a problem. We've fixed that in this rule now so that it fires correctly. So it only fires if unit disposition was not patient contact made and something other than these two values were chosen for the transport disposition. Okay, so a technical bug in that rule, just getting it to work the way it says it's supposed to work. Questions on that one? The second one that was changed was number 187. Level of care provided per protocol should be recorded with a value other than no care provided when patient evaluation and care is patient evaluated and care provided. This assertion worked correctly when a level of care was empty, but it did not fail. So it did not fire a warning if level of care was set to no care provided and patient evaluation and care was indicating that care was provided. So that one's been fixed. So it will now fire in this case. If you evaluated and provided care, then obviously you can't say that your level of care was no care provided. So it'll catch that case correctly now. And that's the second change to the national schematron files. So vendors, this one is really simply just deploy the new national schematron schema. And these rules will be fixed in there. Of course, the XSD changes are a little more involved. You've got to do some database updates and such to support those new values in the triage elements. All right, that's it. Any final questions or comments on? Oh, and Clay, I think you wanted to bring it back around to timelines too. Any other questions? Okay, Clay, anything you want to talk about as far as timelines for implementing?
Yeah. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, and if any other questions come up as you're thinking through the ideas and the changes that Josh shared, feel free to share those in the chat or bring them up during the call here while we're discussing the timeline. So yeah, the next natural question is when are we expecting the critical patch to be applied nationwide? As Josh mentioned, we worked very hard just to scope this as a critical patch, not adding additional things that could have been fixed or would be great to have fixed. We've tried to keep it a very, very narrow critical patch. Would like to talk about the timeline with the vendors and with the states here. As a guideline, our national custom element white paper and rules associated with the development and implementation of national custom elements indicates a timeline once released of 90 days. And so if we start with that as a starting point with the idea that we had planned and had reported, and I'm sure vendors have it in their work plans that this critical patch would be released in May, as we announced last year and earlier this year. It's come out early, and that just gives us some additional time to work with this. But if we plan for 90 days, beginning with the end of March, then that would suggest an implementation date across the nation of August 1. So I wanted to throw that out there and see if there were any comments related to us setting that as the cutover to critical patch 4.
No problem from our end, at least. Just want to make sure that states let us know when they're ready for the updated CP4.
Thanks, David.
Hey, Clay, it's Mark Roberts. Do you happen to know, are the vendors ready to distribute this patch yet, or do we know even if they're ready, or how would we know?
Yeah, a great question, Mark. Yeah, so I'm sure that they're not ready now, right? The critical patch has been on the website, but we haven't announced it until this very moment. So the date of August 1 would be when we would expect everyone to be able to cut over. We could certainly, during this time frame, provide a list like we're doing, as David mentioned, for states, when they plan to implement the new trauma triage criteria. That will basically be either utilizing the national custom elements for the next 3 months, or just being ready to implement the critical patch by August 1. But we could certainly try to keep an update as to where states are with that, and we could also try to keep up with where vendors are planning to have their critical patch 4 released.
I only ask that because states are kind of at the mercy of their vendor. So it really starts there. And then the states can determine that once the vendors are ready to go. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And I know you were interested in having a cutover date. How does that sound to Arizona?
No, I think that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I think that works for us.
Okay. Thanks,
And
Hannah.
I have a feeling most vendors will probably have it available to apply before then anyway. That's just like when they have to. So, yeah.
Any other comments regarding August 1 as the cutoff, as the cutover date?
So this is not a compliance issue at this point, correct?
Right. This is not a compliance issue.
Yeah, I think the anticipation is that these new values that are being added in this critical patch will be included in next year's test cases. So it'll be a little while before you see them in testing.
All right.
Yeah, any other questions for Josh or I? Sorry, Ben.
No, that's okay. Actually, Josh is up next anyway, so.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, the EMS Interoperability Task Force. Wanted to just make a couple quick notes about that. The task force is meeting again tomorrow at 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. It uses the same Zoom link as this meeting, and we welcome all comers to that task force meeting. We've had some good discussions in the task force to really try to understand who is going to partner with whom to make interoperability happen, like who actually signs the agreements and sets up connections to other systems, and who are those other systems. So we had a few loose ends that we wanted to tie up, and we're going to try to do that on tomorrow's task force call. We're going to have eHealth Exchange talking about how what the options are for becoming a participant in their network. We'll have No2 talking about the options for becoming a participant in their network. And then we had a proposal to write a position paper or letter to the Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT that essentially lays out the position of the EMS industry as a group about interoperability, laying out just some of these basics, like EMS providers are healthcare providers, and they should have access, the national laws, federal laws, in fact, verify and state that EMS providers have or should have access to data for interoperability, that they should be able to share, send, and receive data between themselves and hospitals and others about a patient's medical history and outcomes, things like that. So that'll be the third thing that we'll cover on the call tomorrow, is kind of starting to put together our list of bullet points that we want to make sure we cover in that position statement. And then use that as a way to represent the collective voice of the EMS industry regarding interoperability. So that's tomorrow. And then I'll also mention the HIMSS conference, the Health Information Management Systems Society. That's next week in Chicago. Several of us will be at that conference. And if you will be there, I would love to take a few minutes to meet with you face-to-face and talk about interoperability. So if you'll be there next week in Chicago at HIMSS, just contact me and I'd love to find a few minutes to meet. And that's it.
Great. Thanks, Josh. Clay, I think we're going to head over to you to talk about more interoperability things with UUID and trauma registry software.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, just wanted to make folks aware of the fact that we're remaining cognizant of the value of using the NEMSIS UUID that's found in version 3.5 of NEMSIS, using that in a unique way to be able to link together trauma registry records with EMS records. And so as folks know, we've been in a partnership with ACS for a number of years to make sure that they have a landing spot for the NEMSIS UUID, with the idea that if the UUID is present in the trauma registry record at the hospital and also in the EPCR, as those two records travel up to state and national repositories, if they both include the NEMSIS UUID, then there becomes a very solid deterministic way to link together records at the state level or the national level without identifiers for the patient or provider or facilities or hospitals. So it's an exciting proposition, and I know that we as vendors and as implementers on the EMS side have been really interested in making this work. And I know that both ImageTrend and ESO, who manage the trauma registries in the country, have also I've been really open to allowing this process to happen. As we're getting states to move to 3.5 now, it's probably a good time for us to meet again and kind of take a look at where we are in the process of actually making that movement of that UUID, the interoperability of that UUID practical. I know ESO, of course, purchased a number of trauma registry products, and I know that they're attempting to migrate all of those to a new trauma registry platform. So it may be a good time for us to meet together either face to face or in a Zoom to be able to just talk about like the practical movement of that UUID from an EPCR to a trauma registry record. So I wanted to let you know that we're beginning the process of planning either a face-to-face or Zoom meeting with the American College of Surgeons present, us present, the NEMSIS TAC, and then vendors and other representatives, state representatives who may want to be a part of that as well. So if you'd be interested in participating in a meeting of that nature, if you would let us know in the chat of your interest, then we'll aggregate the names. And as we begin to put together this, I will clearly just be a one-day event, probably only several hours, and probably by Zoom, but maybe face-to-face. We still want to work through that process and determine what might be best as far as the format goes. But we'll announce that in the future. So if you have interest in at least being on that list, if you'd let us know in the chat, we'd appreciate that. Any questions?
This is Bill from Colorado. So our trauma side has definitely been reaching out to us about this. And they did look, and they actually already have 205 records linked in the system for 12 different facilities already. So they're really excited and are looking forward to finding out as much information as possible about being able to utilize the UUID. Their big question is, in regards to, when you're crossing across different systems with different EMS vendors and the different registries, what is that process and what is the best practice for being able to link that UUID? Definitely want to avoid anything that's manual entry. Copying and pasting, of course, is not optimal either, but they're just looking for best practices and are excited to use it and are excited that there are already 205 records linked.
Yeah, Bill, that's actually great news. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's heartening to know that it's working. And I know that it's working in other parts of the country as well. And but best practices remain, right? I think there's even some folks that are cutting and pasting, and the UUID is a very complex code. So yeah, thank you. We'll make sure that we include you, and perhaps it might be great to have you kind of share with what's been happening in your state to this point. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's great, Bill. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Clay. Eric, any items from the Office of EMS?
Hey, good morning all, or afternoon all. I have nothing specific other than to mention again, if you are working on your submissions for grant funding for DOT and there's something specific you're working on, if you can, again, through your state directors, let us know the projects that you're working on, you're planning on submitting. We're trying to keep a running roster of what they are so that we can support their submissions from our end as they come in. And if there's a question about a topic, maybe the state highway office doesn't understand how the administration of blood or establishing a blood program in your state is important, we can help support the understanding of that. That would be huge. Likewise, if there's something that we can provide you from the TAC to help that submission, that's great. We are working to get a couple folks who have gotten grant funding, for example, the new SS4A, the Safe Systems for All grant that's out there. We're looking at getting some people who have submitted successfully to those to speak to groups like this if you're interested in. I know that Sam Hurley is heading a group for the SEMSO, who is trying to put together almost like a menu of topics that would be acceptable with the background information available on those topics so that you don't have to recreate the wheel. This is a very similar approach to what we did with NEMSIS and providing you with background information on UUIDs and other topics related to just NEMSIS in general. Again, I realize that states can submit for anything. That's why I used the blood example, not just data and data collection. So if you need some assistance, please reach out, let us know. We're happy to also help kind of broker the deal with another state. If you guys want to work collectively in a region to take a regional approach with NHTSA, I think that would be something that might be welcomed as well. I'm happy to answer any questions on anything related to the Office of EMS, but that's really all I have for you today.
All right. Well, thanks, Eric. And before we head into open forum, I'll just plug a couple dates. We have an upcoming public training on Tuesday, May 2nd from noon to 1 Eastern on using EMS data for traffic safety. The next V3 call is April 26th. And then don't forget that the annual meeting is August 22nd through 24th, which may sound a little far away, but is coming up pretty quickly. And with that, we will open it up for open forum. If anyone has anything they'd like to type in chat or come off mute, please feel free.
Hi, it's Mark Roberts. I have a quick question. Is there any intention to start displaying the number of 3.5 records, not necessarily by state, but just in total? How many we're receiving or have received to date? I know that we have a total that's out there, but that kind of combines everything. It'd be nice to start seeing some 3.5 data numbers coming in to be able to help support when we talk to our agencies and make sure they realize that this is really happening and the numbers are growing on a daily basis. And I just think that would be a good view to have.
Yeah, definitely something we'll make note of.
Yeah, so Mark, this is Clay, just like a national total.
Yeah, when you log in, something on your homepage, it displays how many records or whatever, just something that's a running total national. Doesn't have to be by state or anything like that. Just kind of a national to start showing that the numbers are increasing.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah.
have kind of a related question, maybe for you, Mark. For the NEMSIS of California, like similar to how we do it nationally for each state, do we have you heard their plans, or is it entirely on them, or do they let anybody know that they're ready to accept 3.5?
So we could take this offline, David, but you need to work with each LIMS individually because they have their own implementation plan, and they're working with their vendors, and it's like 34 little states. So the big thing was the state can accept the data now. So now it's up to the LIMSs to get their people in line and then start reporting to the state.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else for open forum? All right, Claire, Julianne, anything?
Nothing for me.
All right. Well, you all know where to find us if you think of anything in the meantime. Thank you all for joining. We certainly appreciate your participation. Please reach out if you need anything in the meantime, and we look forward to seeing you all on April 26th for the next V3 call.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks, everyone.